Hey there guys, so yeah, let's talk about some of the boxing that happened on the weekend. I'm only going to be discussing the PBC fight in this video. I might be doing another video on the Fabio Wardley versus Fraser Clark fight, because that was an unbelievable fight, but I haven't really watched anything on the undercard for that fight, so I'll probably do that maybe tomorrow, after I've watched a couple, some of the major fights on the undercard. But yeah, today I'm going to be discussing the PBC card, the first that was on Amazon Prime. And yeah, I watched most of the fights live. And I didn't watch the Kermel Moton fight because, I wasn't really interested. It was just him versus some random guy in an 8-rounder. I wasn't really too interested in that. But, most of the big fights on the card I watched. And yeah, let's start with one of the free bouts that aired on YouTube. Serhii Bohachuk versus Brian Mendoza. So yeah, going into this fight, I was expecting this to be like a 50-50 fight. I thought I'd seen Bohachuk fight against Brandon Adams, and I know that was a couple of years ago, but he hadn't really fought anyone at a high level since then. He was just fighting journeyman, just sort of rebuilding after a stoppage loss. And when I watched him against Brandon Adams, he showed good pressure in that fight. He showed a good work rate. But I thought Adams was able to win some of the rounds. I thought the fight was very close when it got stopped. And I wasn't overly impressed with him. I thought he was a decent sort of fringe contender. But if someone like Brandon Adams is able to be very competitive, and he's able to stop you, then you're probably not at world level. But to be honest, his performance in this fight really surprised me. Now I know Brian Mendoza has been through quite tough fights in his career, especially recently. With the Tszyu fight, the Sebastian Fundora fight. I believe he's had two defeats in his career. No, he's had 4 defeats now. He's lost to a couple of guys early in his career. So he's had quite a few hard fights. He's taken quite a lot of damage in his career, given his fighting style. But yeah, Bohachuk in this fight really impressed me. Just the way he was just able to absolutely dominate Brian Mendoza for pretty much 12 rounds. It was very impressive considering what Mendoza was able to do against Fundora, against Tszyu. Bohachuk was able to beat Mendoza more impressively than Tszyu was. And Bohachuk was just on the front foot all night. He was coming forward with a really good high guard, which was very strong. Mendoza wasn't really able to land anything clean. Bohachuk was able to ride with those shots and block them very effectively. And he would just back Brian Mendoza up to the ropes. And when he was on the ropes, he would just completely unload. Mendoza's only defense was like to try and throw like a Hail Mary left hook, just hoping that he would score a knockout shot. But Bohachuk was able to see that coming, and he was just able to outwork him on the ropes and just beat him up. And I thought Brian Mendoza had a bit of success in the second round. I thought he might have stunned Bohachuk like momentarily. But after round 2, it was all one-way traffic. Mendoza showed a lot of heart in the fight. He showed he was very tough. He took some massive shots and he didn't go down once. But yeah, Bohachuk was very impressive. Just his pressure for 12 rounds, his really high work rate, his great stamina, very fundamentally sound with his high guard. And yeah, he's a fighter that's improved a lot since, early in his career. He's really improved under Manny Robles. And yeah, he looks like he's a problem in the super welterweight division. To beat someone like Brian Mendoza so comfortably, and put in such a dominant performance, it's very, very impressive. And yeah, I believe he's the mandatory for Sebastian Fundora. And yeah, that's a very interesting fight. It would be interesting to see, how Fundora would deal with the constant pressure from Bohachuk. So I don't think he's really fought anyone like that before. I could just see that fight being a war of attrition for 12 rounds. Not sure who would win, but I think he'll be very close, up until a stoppage or a decision. So yeah, I was very impressed with Bohachuk, and he's a guy who definitely has proven he's world level at this point. And yeah, he's someone who's improved massively over the last couple of years. So yeah, starting off the main card, Julio Cesar Martinez defended his WBC flyweight title against Angelino Cordova. Now, Cordova going into this fight was just like an unknown commodity. This was just an optional defense. Most of the time, Cordova was just fighting, in Venezuela against just nobodies, to be honest. Guys were just losing records, guys who were just getting knocked out in the first and second round. But then you had two decent 10-rounders in America against guys who were decent, but not world level. And they were both split decisions as well, very close fights. So going into the fight, you didn't really expect too much. But I mean, he really put in a good performance. Julio Cesar Martinez is someone who, he's always in great fights. He's one of these Mexican guys who just walks forward, just blocks punches with his face. He's extremely durable. He's got a lot of power. He's very heavy-handed. And in the early rounds, Cordova was able to outwork him just because he was able to land the cleaner shots. Martinez is someone who can be a slow starter. We've seen in a couple of his fights that he's a bit slow to get going sometimes. And Cordova was able to take advantage, but in the third round he was dropped twice. Once by a jab, I believe. And it looked like he was about to be taken out, but he was able to weather the storm. And yeah, he was able to push Julio Cesar Martinez very, very hard over the last, for the full distance. I think after the knockdowns, Martinez had a lot of success. I think he won quite a few rounds in a row. But later in the fight, I think Cordova took over a bit just because Martinez might have been gassing a bit. He wasn't really throwing as many punches as he was earlier in the fight. And in the last couple of rounds, Cordova, he was winning. I think he probably won the 9th and the 10th round. The 11th was quite close. And he could have taken the 12th as well. But to be honest, I think Julio Cesar Martinez did win the fight. I think his harder shots, he was able to hurt Cordova quite a lot of times in the fight. Cordova was a bit chinny from, what we saw. Martinez, I don't think, was ever hurt once, even though he was taking shots, bang on the chin, massive left hooks, right hands, he was just taking them. And he didn't really look stunned ever in the fight. But his superior power was able to win him a couple of rounds, after the third round. I thought he did string a couple of rounds together. And I've got no problem with the decision. I thought he won 7-5 or 8-4. And obviously he scored the two knockdowns in the third, so, sort of 150 and 111 type fight. But to be honest, Cordova, he definitely showed he's got something to give at world level. He showed he's got a decent skill set. He showed he's got heart, he's got toughness. So maybe he could come again. Martinez is just someone who, I don't think he's world level. I don't think he's got the skill set to be a truly world-class fighter, but, he's always in great fights, and that's all you can really ask from someone. I don't think he'd beat Bam Rodriguez or Sonny Edwards or someone like that. But as long as he's matched the right way and you put him in great fights, then, he's always going to be someone who delivers. And yeah, that was probably, for me, that was probably the fight of the night. I just thought that was, the flyweight fights, the lower weight fights are always great, just because of the volume that those guys throw, and most of those guys just go to war every single time. So yeah, next fight, I'll just get Erislandy Lara versus Michael Zerafa out of the way. Erislandy Lara did what he was supposed to do against Michael Zerafa. Even though Lara's 40 years old, he still should have been a level above Michael Zerafa, and he was, to be honest. Michael Zerafa is someone, he's been around for quite a while, but he's someone who has always fallen short of world level. He got knocked out by Peter Quillin quite early in his career. He got pretty much dominated and schooled by Kell Brook a couple of years ago. And I think he beat Jeff Horn, but then lost the rematch. And he's someone who's kind of basic, to be honest. I don't think he's not a high level fighter. And, even at 40 years old, I think Lara put in the performance that he should have done. And I suppose you can say it's quite impressive for Erislandy Lara to be in such good shape at 40 years old. He's still very sharp. He's still very powerful. And yeah, he still looked like he was in quite good shape. He still looked like he's got quite a lot left to give. So he must be someone who keeps himself in shape all year round, someone who always trains. Sometimes fighters will just blow up in weight out of, you look at someone like Ricky Hatton, for example. His career was pretty much done by the time he fought Manny Pacquiao. Even before that, when he fought like Paulie Malignaggi, even after that fight. But Erislandy Lara is someone who always keeps himself in shape. And yeah, maybe he could finally get that Danny Garcia fight next that was supposed to be happening. But yeah, he did what he was supposed to do. And yeah. So let's talk about Rolly Romero versus Isaac Cruz. Rolly Romero, I mean, the guy's garbage, to be honest. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked about Rolly Romero on this channel, but the fact that he was able to win a world title just proves the fact that anyone can win a world title. He's just, the only real attributes Rolly Romero's got is a bit of power and a bit of sharpness. He's quite sharp with his punches, but his defense is just non-existent. He just gets hit with absolutely everything, and that's just the main problem. He catches everything on his chin. He tries to fight out of a shoulder roll, but he just can't make it work for him at all. And he's very susceptible to pressure. You saw in his fight before Cruz against the guy who fought Anthony Crolla. He's getting beaten up and then got a gift stoppage. And going into the fight, I thought Isaac Cruz was probably going to do a job on him. And yeah, that's exactly what he did. Isaac Cruz was just coming forward with his high guard, bobbing and weaving, and he was just able to piece up Rolly Romero on the inside. He was just coming forward like a buzzsaw, throwing his hooks. And you saw from round one when Rolly Romero got badly hurt, he wasn't going to win that fight. Unless he landed like a massive shot, that just put Cruz out in one, he probably didn't have much of a chance of winning. And I don't even think he won a round, to be honest. I thought Cruz won every single round, just based on his aggression and his work rate. Rolly landed some decent shots at times, but I think Cruz probably won every round. But Rolly's just one of these guys. You just know it's not going to be the end of his career. You just know he's going to get on like Instagram Live and just call out whoever, like Ryan Garcia, or like Devin Haney, or Teofimo Lopez, someone like that. And he's just going to talk himself into a big fight. I think Rolly's got quite a big following. And to be honest, I mean, if you're one of those guys like Ryan Garcia, you probably just look at Rolly Romero and think this guy's a joke. It's an easy win. And he's quite popular, so he'll probably do quite well on pay-per-view and whatnot. So I don't think we've seen the last of Rolly Romero. Even though that loss was quite brutal. So Isaac Cruz, I think, is quite underrated from a technical point of view. He's got a very good high guard. His guard's quite strong. It's quite hard to pierce. And he's very strong. He's very big for the weight. He carries some power. He's got a very good chin. And yeah, I think I'd love to see him fight Subriel Matias. I think that would be an absolute war. I'd probably favour Matias just about to beat him, but I think it'll be a great fight, and I think that's probably the best fight to make 140 pounds. And yeah, regardless of who he fights next, it's going to be a great fight. I thought he beat Gervonta Davis a couple of years ago. I thought he won that fight, and yeah, I just want to see him in with the likes of Regis Prograis, Subriel Matias, he like Devin Haney maybe. just put him in some great fights. And yeah, I think he's quite underrated, to be honest. I think he's a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. He's more than just someone who comes forward and throws a lot of shots. So yeah, let's talk about the main event, which is quite a controversial main event, given what happened with Tszyu running into the elbow. So yeah, going into the fight, most people, including myself, thought Tszyu was going to win this fight, probably by stoppage. And in the first 2 rounds, that's the way the fight was going. Tszyu clearly won both of those rounds, in my opinion, especially the second. The second was a dominant round. He was able to piece Mendoza up with power shots. Sorry, not Mendoza, Fundora up with power shots. And just looking at that round, you thought, okay, this fight is probably going to be, mid-round. He's probably going to get the stoppage. But at the end of the round, obviously, we know what happened. Tszyu got cut on the head with an elbow. It was an accidental elbow. I mean, Fundora was just bringing the elbow down to put his guard in place, and Tszyu just unfortunately ran into the elbow, which cut him on the head. But it was a very bad gash. Even when he was like exiting his corner after when the round was starting, it was still bleeding. And his cut man didn't really do a very good job. I think Joe Goosen on the commentary team was saying that they didn't have the right chemicals in the corner and whatever. And it looked like it because, they just whatever they were doing, they weren't able to stop the bleeding. And pretty much every round, Tszyu came out after that, it was bleeding, as soon as he was going out for the round. And it was a horrendous cut. It was really impairing his vision. It was bleeding into, both eyes. And his face was just a mask of blood. And I think, a lot of people are saying the fight should have been stopped. I don't really like fights being stopped on cuts. I think, it's a way to make sure the A side wins, and it's very inconsistent. You look at a fight like Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara. That fight was stopped on a cut in the second round, which caused a technical draw. That cut was bad, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the worst cut you've ever seen. And then, you look at a fight like Kubrat Pulev when he fought Bogdan Dinu. That was a horrendous cut. It was one of the worst cuts you've ever seen. But he was able to go on, and he was able to get the stoppage in the end. So I don't really like fights being stopped on cuts, but, if I was in Tszyu's corner, I would probably have been saying to the, just telling him, okay, tell the ref you can't see. Because everyone knew it was, an accidental foul, and it would have gone to the scorecards. And, after the 5th round, Tszyu, in my opinion, was winning the fight. I think I had him up 3-2 at that point. And obviously it's a risk to go to the scorecards at that point because you might be losing. You never know how the judges are scoring it, but if that was me, that's probably what I would be doing, just to get the win, get it out of the way, maybe have a rematch afterwards. Because, after that cut, you saw that Tszyu wasn't the same. You saw that he wasn't able to have as much success as he was in the first 2 rounds. And I did think Sebastian Fundora won the fight. I just thought he outworked Tszyu in enough of the rounds to take most of them. I thought he won, 7-5, 8-4. I've got no problems with the decision. I think a lot of the rounds were close. A lot of the rounds after the 5th were quite close, in my opinion. But I did edge the fight to Fundora. I thought the right man won. I wouldn't have really argued with like a draw, for example. I think there should be a rematch either way. An immediate rematch. Because even though Fundora showed a lot in the fight, he showed a different element to his game. He showed that he could box on the back foot. Fundora's always been someone who loves to fight on the inside. He doesn't really use his height and reach. He's always been someone who likes to just get on the inside and trade. He did that with Brian Mendoza He's done that his whole career, to be honest. But he showed that in this fight that he could box on the back foot. He showed that he was effective with a jab, just throwing straight punches from the outside, using his height and reach advantages. And I think he's a bit underrated, Fundora. I think, I still think he's a bit vulnerable. Like, his defense isn't the best. And maybe he's got a shaky chin, but, he can do a lot of things well. He's quite versatile. He showed in this fight he can fight inside or outside. And he's very proficient when he fights inside. He's got very good pressure. He's able to break guys down, very effectively. You saw when he fought Erickson Lubin, he was able to break Lubin down and make him capitulate and quit on his stool. But I do think that this should be an immediate rematch because I don't believe the best fighter won. I still think Tszyu is probably the better fighter. And if there was a rematch, I don't think there should be a rematch in the next couple of months. I think they should let that cut heal. But if there was a rematch, I'd definitely favour Tszyu to win by stoppage. I think without the cut, I think Tszyu would have won. I think that cut just did enough to impair him in the fight. I think it did enough to just throw him off his game. And without the cut, I still think he would have won by stoppage. But fair play to Sebastian Fundora. He went out there and he won the fight. Legitimately, in my opinion. And it's just unfortunate that the cut happened. He wasn't like doing some Andre Ward style shit where he was like trying to cut his opponents with an elbow. It was just an unfortunate accident. So so I actually thought the PBC card was actually very entertaining. PBC cards have been underwhelming in the past, and that's putting it lightly. Some of their cards are just flat out boring. But I suppose, the first show on Amazon Prime, they wanted to put on a good show, so people, buy the card, and, Amazon were quite impressed with what they saw. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What did you think of the card? And what did you think of the Tszyu versus Fundora fight as well? And yeah, thanks for watching, and God bless.